Welcome to Buckets Live, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, and we're going to be covering the NBA draft for you, betting side here on Buckets Live throughout the first 5 picks of the draft. We're going to talk about everything going on. And to do that, I've got two of the very best. I've got market reader Michael Fiddle in the house. You can find him on Twitter at at Fiddle's Picks in the Action Network app and on Twitter. I've also got Brandon Anderson, NBA futures analyst and Draftnik obsessive at Wheaton Brando on Twitter and the Action Network app. It's also Brandon's birthday, so a very happy birthday to Brandon Anderson. I am jacked because there's so much instability, there's so much craziness, there's so much chaos with this draft, and we're going to start right here because moments before we went on the air, Adrian Wojnarowski on ESPN said that the Atlanta Hawks are deciding between Zachary Risacher and Reed Sheppard, who has been taking money all day and was 4 digits an hour ago. And now all of a sudden, there's a lot changing here. Fiddle, can you give me kind of a sense of what the market has looked like with Sheppard? Number 1 is off the board at BetMGM, king of sportsbooks right now, reacting to this news as we are here live on Buckets Live.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate the draft day line movement probably on the 2. Like, it has not been that noisy, but the one sneaky thing has been Reed Sheppard climbing up the number 1 odds board. I think it was like north of 60 to 1, 70 to 1. That's like a plus 7,000 in the market just as of like 24 hours ago. Slowly climbing up 60 to 1. I saw 28 to 1, 22 to 1, 15 to 1, now all the way to single digits when Woj drops the news that it's between the best shooter since Stephen Curry and Zachary Risacher. So it is very interesting. This is why we started Buckets Live a few minutes earlier than we were expecting to, because draft madness has officially ensued as of 7:40 Eastern time.
Brandon, let me ask you this. You were high on Sheppard. Do you think that he's worthy of being the number 1 pick? Because I've heard a lot of big boards had Sheppard number 1.
As does mine. He is, in fact, the number 1 player on my big board. Now, I will say, as I've talked to friends today, oh, it's the NBA draft. Is it a good draft? Are we excited? I'm like, well, the number 1 player on my draft board is a 6'3" white American guard from Kentucky. So does that tell you anything about the quality of the draft? We don't get a lot of guys like this that are the number 1 pick superstars. Like, to come up with a comp, you're like, Steph Curry? How about Mark Price? Can interest you in modern Mark Price? Like, it's hard to find a very small player like this, a player with a neutral wingspan, difficult defensively. Like, there's a lot of reasons cognitively to be like, how does this work? But at the end of the day, Matt, I know you like him too. Like, there's just so much to like about him. His shooting numbers are off the charts. He's like a basketball savant, the way that he reads the game, the way that he understands it, his positioning, the way he moves. He is a guy, to me, he's a force multiplier. We think of stars in the NBA as the guy that goes and gets you a bucket, right? We have a definition of what that means. Reed Sheppard is a guy, if we're right, if he's the number 1 sort of guy, he's the guy that makes every other player better. We've seen that now. We've seen Nikola Jokic clearly does that with his teammates. He's not Nikola Jokic, but it's that sort of effect. That's what you're hoping he's going to be if he's the number 1 pick, or wherever you take him high in the draft. That's what you're hoping he could be. And look, the draft is what it is. You can only take the guys that are available. He's my number 1 available. He's who I would take at number 1.
This has been a wild day in terms of, and it's been a wild draft. So here's one thing I will say. The Atlanta Hawks had not chosen as of this weekend, and I had heard, like, as of this morning, they were still keeping it. They had not notified agents that they had made a decision, which is why I've been very curious about why Risacher has taken so much steam, Fiddles. Like, it felt like someone talked to someone, and then ESPN went with him number 1. And then everybody was like, well, I've heard the same, so I'll put him number 1. And then people saw that and started betting Risacher number 1. And it, like, there's this feedback loop that happens. Now, they could still take Risacher. Shams Charania of The Athletic is reporting that they are, the language is always hilarious on draft night, honing in is tonight's word du jour on Zachary Risacher. They could definitely still take Risacher, But I have simply, what I have said is, I don't know who you should bet. I just know that Risache minus 450 is not a good number, given that we do not know that this is a lock for sure. This is done thing. There has been no indication of that, Fiddles.
So you said minus 450 and BetMGM takes it off the board. Other places are moving this to minus 2,000 right now on Risache number one. So I'm going to throw some conspiracy theories here and say maybe the Reed Shepherd talk is some smoke because they know teams around 3 and 4 are very interested in Shepherd. So could they be trying to drum up some last minute trade talks thinking, okay, we're going to take Risache, but maybe we trade the pick if we float Shepherd, and that causes other teams to want to trade up and come get their guy. I think it becomes a moment where if the Atlanta Hawks are drafting number one, I'd be very surprised if it ends up being Reed Shepherd.
I mean, look, I'd be surprised from the sense that it wasn't, we hadn't really heard anything, but like, look, I don't believe that the market is accurate on these type of things. And we've seen the market miss wildly on the draft the last couple of years. So I'm just not necessarily sold that the movement is like, it is like in a big place here. And I kept asking and pressing like, well, okay, have the Hawks decided? Like, do you know that the Hawks have chosen? And they're like, no, they don't know. I'm like, then why is everyone so confident on Risache? Again, Risache can go one. It's just like very wild to see the market get this much out of hand based off of the information that we know, which is like the information, if you really get into it, like what's the information? What do we know right now? The answer is like, we know that no one knows what the Hawks are doing. That's what we know, which means there's value on just about everybody else. We're trying to figure out where that's going to go. We'll talk about scenarios in a minute as we kind of process this. I do want to go ahead and make sure we take care of some business here. First, I want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or over. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Fiddle, I want to talk to you. These markets are going to go off the board at various books the minute the draft starts. Some books will just pull them, but at the second that one team goes on the clock, because they're scared of taking on too much liability, but some will keep them up. There will be live betting opportunities available. Talk to me a little bit about how people should prepare to live bet during this NBA draft.
Yeah, so because of the chaos specifically around the top of the board, this has been a draft that I've been preparing for. Should be great opportunities for live betting purposes. So let's tee that up. And how does that look? First off, how does your screen look, right? So I personally have 2 screens, but if I only had one, I would put the odds screen as half of my window. Choose the book that you have the most liquidity at. Choose the book that you think has the best available markets. On this show, we will be tracking BetMGM. So if you have a good MGM account, you obviously should bring that up, and we will be talking about the exact odds. In another corner of the screen, I would have social medias up with alerts on certain people. Turn on your Shams alerts today. Make an NBA draft list. It might be too late in the game. Good thing you're here because we've already taken care of that for you. Make sure your sound is on loud for this Action Network YouTube channel. You can make our windows smaller. We won't mind. Turn the volume up and be prepared with your computer to have a bunch of different windows to be able to toggle through. So then once your computer's set up, once you get to your book with your liquidity and your good markets and you recognize that, start queuing up your bets already. Like Matt just said, some of these are just going to be taken off the board. It's just going to go closed, but you don't want to be fiddling, pun intended, with who am I picking in the odds? Which market exactly am I choosing? So we're going to be building out some of these if-then statements, right? If Risache goes number one, then Alex Sarr really likely goes number two, and it's a strong live bet. So I will have Alex Sarr number two already queued up with my risk already determined. These odds are going to move. You don't want to be trying to win one unit with everything that you're doing. Think about it by just risking one unit. Let the reward change based on how the odds shift, because you need to act fast. So just have your bet queued up, have your risk amount in it, and just have the submit button ready to be clicked, because we are going to have to act fast in here. So you have your computer set up, you have your bets queued, you have your risk determined, And then I would say don't really overly concern yourself with crazy long odds. Some of these situations are still worth playing into. A minus 1,000 is like a 91% implied probability on a money line in an outcome of a game. That is tough to generate enough reasons for why said team has less than 10% chance to win. In an NBA draft scenario, this is information based. This is sourcing of information. We know certain things are going to happen higher than 95% chance in some of these scenarios, not all of them. So we will be choosy as to which ones, but we can play into some really long odds and just take home some small returns.
Okay, great stuff there. I think something kind of update here. This is an exact quote via Brad Rowland, who covers the Hawks. This is a quote from Woj. I'm told that Ricochet continues to separate himself in this pre-draft process, and Ricochet is closing in at the top of the draft board in Atlanta as they get ready to hand in their pick. He's minus 2,000 now at one of the books in the market is Zachary Ricochet. So I am very amused, though, where this says, I'm told that Ricochet continues to separate himself in this pre-draft process. We got 20 minutes, Hawks. Like, less than that. The draft's supposed to start in 7 minutes. And the pre-draft process continues, but that's how they roll. We'll see how this unfolds here. So let's talk a little bit about this. Let's assume that Ricochet goes 1. Is there a number you don't want Sarr at? Is there any number where you're just like, no, fiddle?
I think minus 2,000 would be it's minus 1,100 on the board at BetMGM right now. I'd be comfortable playing that. I would assume it moves to like minus 1,600. Once it gets beyond that, I'd probably drop it. But Matt, to that point, like that, we need to have confirmation that it's Ricochet, because if it does become Shepherd, we've been talking on previous Buckets episodes that Ricochet suddenly becomes a strong live bet if Sarr was to be the surprise guy that shoots up to number 1. So if Shepherd's off the board at number 1, this hammer live bet number 2 becomes a huge cause for pause and wait and think about this situation.
All right. Let's, since this board is constantly moving, by the way, Exacta's top 3 selection picks are now off the board at BetMGM as well. So they are slowing down on what we're going to be able to get into here, and that is okay.
I got a question for Fiddle. So you're lining up your number 2 bet. So let's say that Ricochet does go number 1. Describe literally to the moment. What is the moment that you were clicking the send button? Like, is it? I assume it is not when Ricochet has walked up onto the stage. We are far past the moment. So tell me, when am I clicking bet?
So I want a tweet from one of the goated sources in this community, right? If Shams throws up the tweet that says the Atlanta Hawks will be selecting Zachary Ricochet with the number 1 overall pick, it will be immediately after that, because that's when the board is going to start rocking. So yeah, you're totally right. And that's why putting that, it's great to have the NBA draft up now because it's a fashion show and these guys are dressed to impress. And I love it. Like, I grew up with my mom owning a clothing store. I legitimately love the NBA fashion stuff. Once it starts, it becomes pretty boring to watch, and everyone's going to be comped to a mix of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, with hints of Magic Johnson. That's what they said about Victor Oladipo on draft night. I don't need to hear any of that stuff. I need to be keyed into the tweets. Brandon, I won't even know when Ricochet is walking the stage because I'm going to be fixated on trying to live bet this thing, and that's pretty irrelevant, as you pointed out.
Makes sense to me.
Let's talk Sarr real quick. Brandon, give me the rundown on Alex Sarr and what he would look like for the Wizards if they go with him at number 2.
Yeah, Sarr is the guy. I'm always a little late to the international guys from a scouting standpoint. Kind of paid attention to college during the season and catching up. So Sarr is a guy that French, but played for Perth. We got to see some G League Ignite games against him back from the fall, and those were kind of the showcase games. To me, out of everyone in the entire class, including Reed Shepherd, who I already waxed poetic about, out of all the players, Alex Sarr is the one guy that I saw on a screen. I was like, oh, okay, top 5 pick right there. Like, the thing that you wanted to pop. You just want to see it and be like, oh, okay, that's an NBA player. Like, this is the guy. He is a modern big. He looks like a Chris Bosh and Evan Mobley sort of size. 10 years ago, that would have been maybe a little problematic. Chris Bosh had to kind of start the 4 and then play a little bit of 5. These days, that's a little bit more traditional. We got 2 big lineups again now. We're seeing, like, that's what a modern big looks like. You want a little, maybe less size, a little more mobility. This is Sarr. He's fluid. He's comfortable. He's comfortable defensively, moving around. He's comfortable with the ball. What you like is you see him trying stuff offensively. You see some flashes with passing. You see him shooting a bunch. You see him pull up, take the mid-range. Now, look, he's missing a lot of them. As a scout, it matters more sometimes that you're taking them, because that means you think you can make them, and it matters that your coach thinks you can make them. And both of those things matter more to me than how many out of 90 did you make. Like, you shot 90 in practice today. I'd rather know that number than your entire season worth of numbers. Shot variance can be a thing. It matters that you're taking those shots, you're making those passes. I think he'll be good on a short roll. He will be obviously very good defensively, good at attacking or protecting the rim. And I think especially for me, comparison to Donavan Clingan, another guy we'll get to, I like that Alex Sarr is versatile. He's a versatile defender. He's an Al Horford sort of defender, maybe. I mentioned Bosch or Mobley, a guy that I think is a 16 gamer in the playoffs, we hope, versus Clingan, who's probably more of a drop, non-versatile guy. I think if you're taking him, you're trying to build a modern 5-out versatile defensive team.
We're getting started with the NBA draft. They're going through the all of the draft prospects and showing them with their families and dressed up in the awesome suits. Rob Dillingham had I think the best so far, because Dilly's amazing. And heard some weird stuff about Dilly today. We'll get into that a little bit later on. Let's do some if-then scenarios here, Fiddle. So you mentioned if Ricochet goes 1, then bet Sarr 2. If Memphis trades up to 3, we should try and get in. If we see a tweet that says Houston has traded up to the number 3 spot, or Memphis rather has traded up to number 3 spot, we should hammer Donavan Clingan, because they've been attached to him forever.
Yeah, that fits them completely. There was even a pre-draft picture that started floating around on Twitter of Jaren Jackson Jr. in a suit vest. Again, incredible outfit from Triple J. And he's interviewing Donavan Clingan at the pre-draft. So all of Grizzlies Twitter starts immediately erupting that these two front court mates are paired together. And the Grizzlies are heavily linked to Clingan because they got rid of Steven Adams. They showed when they were without Brandon Clark how important that was and how important having a 5 next to Triple J is. So they want someone who could play with pace, who could play with speed, who could run the court and fit into their system with size. So that fits Clingan to a T. We know that the Grizzlies have tried to be very aggressive in the past. We just had Mikal Bridges being traded to the New York Knicks. The Grizzlies were the team that offered 5 first-round picks for Mikal when he was sent from Phoenix to the Nets, and they said, can we just take him off your hands right away? So we know that this Grizzlies team has been very active. Their cap situation shows that they need to add talent now, that they could exceed the cap in future years. So this is the year where they're going to try and push some chips. So I expect Memphis to really try and trade up.
So the last one here in a scenario, you've got, if Houston keeps number 3, then we should bet Reed Shepherd with the number 3 pick. I talked to people about this a lot today. This is kind of, let's assume that Reed Shepherd doesn't go number 1. If Houston gets to number 3 and it's Reed Shepherd, I will say this, that they've made noise about taking Clingan. I continue to believe that that's in part to try and pressure Memphis. The other thing that's on the board here is that Houston has been playing San Antonio versus Charlotte for at least the last 48 hours, where they are saying, hey, whichever one of you gives us a better offer, we'll take it, and you get Stephon Castle, because both the Hornets and Spurs want him. Now, I'm skeptical that this happens, because I think that Charlotte's probably like, we're good with whoever gets there. Like, we don't think you're going to take him, Houston. And then San Antonio takes, if San Antonio takes Castle, then we'll still be okay, probably with a Dalton Connect, or they'll trade back. They'll do the Memphis deal. So there's a bunch of sequencing here, but I will say that I was told once again today that Houston, their number 1 guy through the entire process has been Reed Shepherd. That was the guy. But people in Houston that have pretty good connections have been talking about Donavan Clingan for about the last 48 hours. They've been talking pretty heavily about him. Clingan's remarkable here, Brandon. Can I ask you this? Give me the rundown on Donavan Clingan and why it is that Clingan could go, like, I thought Clingan was going to go number 1. I would very much like it if the surprise happened of the century and Donavan Clingan went number 1. That would help me very much. Probably not going to happen. But tell me why it's like he was on the board at 1, He could go 3. He could go 4. He could go 5. He could go 6. He could go 9. Why is the board all over the place on Donavan Clingan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason everyone is high on him to start with is we just watched Rudy Gobert go to a new team and totally transform the Timberwolves and take them to the brink of the finals. We watched him win his 4th Defensive Player of the Year. We watched the all-time drop big man, at least for in this modern era, do the thing. And I think that was really good timing for Donavan Clingan, because that is what you hope you're drafting. He's basically, by size, he's a Gobert clone. He is about the exact same height, the same standing reach, all that stuff. He's going to play drop defense. He's going to protect the rim. We watched Minnesota do that. We watched Dallas do that. We saw Dallas pack the paint, cut it off, protect the rim. We saw a lot of success this way, and we usually see a lot of success this way, obviously. So that's what you're getting with Clingan. You're getting a known commodity, played for 2 years on a national champion, like an all-time modern NCAA champion. We know he's good. I think the reason that there's variability, though, is what year is it? And how does he fit into the modern NBA? How does he fit on each roster? If you took Donavan Clingan and put him onto the Mavericks the way they played this year in the finals, all right, that sounds great. Plug him in. Let's play him in the finals right now. If you took him and put him into like the Warriors or other teams that play a little different style, ain't going to go that well. It's not going to fit. Or more importantly, perhaps, if he has to defend against some of those teams, that might not go so well either. Suddenly, he's away from the rim. He's getting pulled to the perimeter. What is he on offense? What about the teams that are going 5 out now? Like, that was what made the Celtics so great. That's not a thing Clingan's going to bring to the table, probably ever. I described him as my comp as, what if Brook Lopez didn't shoot? Well, that would still be pretty valuable, right? Brook Lopez has been a near DPOI favorite the last few years. But what if he didn't shoot? Now you have that offense. And what if it's 5 or 10 years from now when Donavan Clingan is like in his prime and really mattering? And where is the value then? That's my skepticism. I think NBA teams are struggling with. We know what he is. There are things he's not also. And which one wins over? And I think that's why he's a bit all over the place.
Okay. So Adam Silver's at the podium doing the intros, getting probably a warm welcome, as he always is, from fans there. I miss when he was at the Garden and they would just boo him or boo Stern mercilessly, no matter what. We'll see what happens as this night unfolds. A couple of things I'm tracking. I've got Modest Bazelis over 5.5. I put that in today after hearing the buzz on Dillingham. By the way, interesting thing on Dillingham is Wasserman over at Bleacher Report was like, he could be sliding. And I've heard all day that he could be rising. So it's been very much like a definite mixed bag as we look at these types of where these guys are going to go. This draft is really uncertain. I think it's entirely possible that I get crushed tonight on bets, but just because it's so uncertain. But I couldn't help myself.
That will be.
Yeah, but I'll just say this: I couldn't help myself just because it's so interesting. It's such an interesting draft, and the uncertainty I thought put a lot of value into trying to find where things are. I've got Cody Williams top 10. I did put some money in on Dillingham to go either 5th or 9th. He was 60-1 today at 5th and 9-1 at 9th. That's if the Grizzlies were to trade back. There is talk right now that the Grizzlies are going to keep their pick. If they do, I expect Ron Holland to go top 10. That's a bet that we did talk about this week on Buckets. If you're listening to us on youtube.com/The Action Network, you can check out our daily podcast Buckets, which you can also find on this feed. Zach Edey under 10.5 is a big position. I think for most of the Action Network folks heard that a lot. That Zach Edey to be top 10 was a very big deal. I've got him at the under 16.5. There's still a 15.5 in the market. So we'll see kind of what happens. The Atlanta Hawks are officially going to be on the clock here as they decide the direction of the franchise. To kind of run down this number 1 pick scenario stuff, I will say this. The understanding is that Landry Fields, who is general manager, is the highest on Zachary Risacher. Coaching very much like Donavan Clingan. I wonder if Shepard is the guy that ownership came in and was like, hey, have we talked about Reed Shepard? Because he seems good. We should talk about Reed Shepard. And that to me kind of feels like it. And whoever's going to decide if this does wind up being Risacher, which it definitely the market says it's going to be Risacher, and that's the most likely scenario by far. If that's what happens, it will be kind of an indication of, oh, hey, maybe the Hawks don't have so many cooks in the kitchen anymore. Maybe we have some stability going forward, and we're going to know what to expect with the Hawks as we go forward with them. Brandon, on Ricochet, I do want to ask this: how does he fit in? Who does he fit better with in terms of Trae Young or DeJounte Murray? They might keep both of them, but if they were to keep only one of them, is there a better fit with either one, or does he fit okay with both?
I think he fits okay with both. I think that the pitch with Ricochet is that he fits everywhere. I think like that's part of what you hope you're getting with him, is you're hoping that you're getting this ready-made wing, this two-way guy that fits a lot of places, fits a lot of lineups. I know there's been comps that are very high on him defensively. I'm not quite as high, but I've heard comps to Jaden McDaniels defensively. If you think that, then that sounds great. In whatever version of Atlanta you've been watching for the last year, adding a version of Jaden McDaniels on the wing into that, yes, please. However that goes, I think maybe you get DeJounte Murray and not Trae Young, who's DeJounte probably a positive defender in that situation, with hopefully a positive defender in Ricochet, and you got some other pieces there. All right, maybe we're actually cooking up a little bit of a defense there with Trae. I don't know. Ricochet is going to like solve the Trae defensive issues, right? So I think that maybe if you just like, we're going in a new direction, we're going to prioritize defense in Atlanta for now. I think that part makes a little bit more sense. Offensively, we don't know if he can shoot yet. That was the big leap this year, was he jumped to 39% on threes. Ricochet did, but from January 31st forward, 23%. So I think this is a team. This is a guy that's going to be a bit developmental and a bit up and down a little bit. But the goal is that he fits everywhere. The goal is that he is a building block that you build around. Like we just saw a player like that, not calling them the same, but Mikal Bridges, we saw what he just cost, 5 first-round picks. You're hoping you're getting a wing, do everything, fit every type of team guy like that in Ricochet.
Pick is in for one. Matt, I think you're muted.
A lot of celebration there on the screen. As
I always wonder why the war rooms get so hyped, especially when you're first
like
pick.
very
Like,
excited. I'm like, I don't know. Zachary
exactly
Ricochet. Shams has got it. Zachary Ricochet, #1 in the 2024 NBA draft. Wow, that's a choice. Okay, so Ricochet goes 1. We're gonna assume Sarr goes 2nd. So Fiddles is probably anxiously looking for a book that's gonna allow him to live bet Sarr right now. Sarr likely goes 2nd. If Sarr does not go 2nd, it's complete chaos. By the way, I will say one huge strike here is, typically speaking, when teams have not had a workout with a guy, it hasn't been like a huge deal. It hasn't been like this monster disaster. But the Hawks were very open and honest about the fact that Sarr did not work out for them. He declined to work out for them multiple times. Like, they were open about that. And I think they were open to drafting him until that happened. So now the question kind of becomes like, does Alex Sarr is Wizards the guy? And I think going forward, Brandon, I'll be curious to kind of track, does it matter if the #1 pick doesn't work out for the #1 team? Because apparently that can cause some hangups. Or is this just that weird of a year, you think?
It's very weird. I mean, like, how did we get here where I don't want to work out for the Atlanta Hawks? I'd prefer to play for the Washington Wizards. Thank you very much. Like, I haven't totally fully processed this yet. And granted, I think probably Bilal Coulibaly being there is, and presumably a bigger part of the future now with Deni Avdija traded away. Like the 2nd pick and Coulibaly, that's the future. That is your Washington Wizards core at this point going forward. So I'm assuming it's that, but I don't know. Like, when do we hear I'm not working out for the #1 team? That's a thing that is familiar in football. I've heard that in football before, but I don't feel like we get that a lot in basketball. So I guess we take it seriously. Do you have other examples that you guys can think of where it's happened before in NBA?
Not the #1 pick. That's the thing, is like Jamal Murray didn't work out for the Nuggets, but they still took him. And the Kings have taken a few guys, because the Kings had a hard time for a while getting guys to come in for workouts because they were the Kings. And that's changed a little bit. Fiddle, I do want to ask you, like, this is probably one that kind of proves like the market, right? Like, the market was accurate. They tracked it over the weekend. It moved heavily towards Ricochet. It kept gaining steam. no movement back. And that kind of shows that the market was right on this. The market had this pegged as far as Ricochet going 1.
Yeah, they were spot on this. The intel was correct. It was shaky the whole time, and I think it was smart for people to not bet into it because it wasn't great intel. But they did get it right, and they laid a minus 450. They probably encouraged a lot of bettors to come in on other people, thinking the noise creates value elsewhere. And it ends up being right, and the books probably did great off that, especially because it wasn't the first player from when draft odds were first posted, right? Sarr was the odds-on favorite when odds were first originally posted after the lottery. And I was thinking, like, is it potentially not just not working out for the team, but I also think we've heard rumblings that Sarr not only chose not to work out, but had workouts scheduled and canceled them. So, like, is it there's like a sour egg or a little sour apple being left from feeling like you're left at the altar, having the meeting scheduled and having it canceled? Reportedly, the second one was canceled day of, so that would leave a sour taste in some of those mouths. Landry Fields is a 35-year-old GM, so when he gets to the grizzled vet of Danny Ainge, he's going to be unemotional about it. But the other thing I've noticed is that these books are pulling a lot of these markets, which I think is a little soft of these books in this betting market. I'm going to call them out. BetMGM, put it back up there. They're leaving 6 through 10 up available in individual orders, but they seem to have pulled the first 5, which makes me think we're headed towards a bit of a chalky start.
It'll be interesting to see kind of what happens with these next 2 picks, because I think that's going to impact number 6. Like number 6 right now in the market, Connect is plus 150 to go 6 to Charlotte. Salon, who was connected today via report of Kristen Peak of Yahoo, is plus 230. Clingan's plus 550. Bazelis is 7 to 1, and Castle is 7.5 to 1. Cody Williams plus 900 there. I think it's probably a little low on Cody Williams, given that he's been dominant in most of the workouts. I do want to note that there are Atlanta Hawks at the draft that are chugging beer while drinking berets, and well, okay, like, all right. It is. Brandon, I'll just say this. I do kind of feel like all that scene of the Hawks war room celebrating is going to be like memed long term. I'm not saying that the kid can't have a great career. It's just, I don't know, man. This was it's not a bad choice, right? Because it's just that none of the big boards got there. Like, this is something that I really track, which is like, what do the draft consultants that I talk to, the smarter people that I try and follow on draft Twitter, like, where do they all? And Ricochet never really got to that level. Where did you have him, Ricochet, on your big board?
Low. I had him low on my big board. I had him. I mean, frankly, I have him outside of my lottery, which is a scary thing to say on a live show reacting to a number 1 pick. But it's this reason. I talked about international guys as not guys that I know a lot about usually until late in the process. Well, you have to earn my interest in you. Alex Sarr earned my interest. I watched him, he popped, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put more time in, do some work on you. What I've seen in Ricochet is less than a lot of their prospects, but it's because he did not earn my interest. He didn't pop to me in a way where I was like, okay, this looks like the number 1 pick. I saw him popping up and I was like, what? I don't even see athleticism here. And then we saw him at the combine post some really, really difficult combine numbers, 4th percentile B-Spark numbers, bad vertical, bad lane agility, bad sprint. I'm seeing number 2 pick. Do we want to jump to that right now and cut myself off here? I got
reported Sarr.
Number 2 pick from Shams, Alex Sarr, Washington.
There we go. Did you get the?
So we are chalk 1-2.
Did you get the minus 1100 in?
No, I tried to get it at minus 1,000 and it locked before that. The reason why I was so confident and the reason why it was worth playing it is you just got to evaluate why he would be telling the Hawks, please don't draft me. And that means he has to have a promise from Washington, right? Because 3 is Houston and they have Şengün and Jabari. 4 is the Spurs. 5 is the Pistons. They have 12 big men. So it's just like he's not going to want to slip from 1 to 6 for fit. At that point, you are costing yourselves millions on even the rookie contract. The difference between the 1 and 2 on the rookie contract, not big enough to overrule the potential of fit and freedom for Sarr on the Washington Wizards. Assume he plays a little bit of a Kristaps Porzingis role of what Porzingis was doing there in years past. And now he teams up with Bilal Coulibaly. You wonder if like the French are just dreaming of a Spurs Wizards finals in the next decade. Like, are the Wizards the team of France, or is it still the Spurs?
Oh, I think it's undeniably the San Antonio Spurs. Come on, man. Tony Parker made them, had already had them
Fair
there,
enough. Fair
and
enough.
now they have the alien. I could use Donavan Clingan or Castle right here because I have long odds on them to go 3, but the most likely scenario is Shepherd. I did get that. I got Risachet, Sarr, Shep at plus 750. So I'm looking okay here in terms of the position I built. I had to start basically building a Risachet Sarr combo exacta because I went early in on Clingan, who I do think was in the Hawks conversation until about the last 10 days, and then something shifted and they went a different direction.
So Matt, I got a question. We're on Spurs here. I know the Spurs were rumored as a possible trade up for one of these French players to pair with Wembanyama. So now that they're presumably staying at 4 and 8, if you were looking to bet the Spurs, what have you heard for them staying and taking?
So again, I think that Houston's trying to get them to trade up to take Stephon Castle. That to me has been the name that has most consistently, like, they've been penciled into Castle pretty consistently. The only way I don't think that Castle goes 4th is if Houston convinces Charlotte to trade up, and then then Charlotte takes Castle at 3, and then 4, the Spurs would likely in that situation probably, I guess, take Shepherd. But it'd be very interesting to see because I haven't necessarily gotten the sense that, like, I've heard nothing connecting Shepherd to San Antonio, but that might have honestly just been because San Antonio was like, he's not going to be there. So we'll see what happens with the next pick as it kind of continues to go through. If you're watching the feed right now on actionnetwork.com/ or youtube.com/ the Action Network, give us a like. Smash the like button for us. Helps us. Let me know in the comment section what your best bet on tonight's first round is. If you guys a juicy bet, because we still can get some of the ones that are later on in the draft, 16 to 20, etc. All those are up and will be very interesting. One I'm watching very closely is Bud Carrington he's now plus 550 at 12 to Oklahoma City. The Thunder are close to the vest, but I am very curious to see here. Brandon, as we talk about the Wizards and we talk about Sarr, can Sarr be a franchise player? Like, can he be like a guy that you build around? Can he imagine like the highest level for Sarr? What is like the absolute ceiling for Alex Sarr?
So I called him in my comp for him. I gave him a supercharged Jaren Jackson Jr. or maybe a supercharged Jabari Smith. So I think that is the hope. And my question is a supercharged Jaren Jackson Jr. a franchise player? If I'm really like, if we're saying that is a 95th or 98th percentile outcome, okay, what about the 100th percentile? What if everything hits? Well, I'm not giving this comp, but if it is the perfect hit, I remember when I did Jaren Jackson, I needed a count for him. I thought if everything clicked offensively, which I don't think it quite has with him, the offense is what matters more than defense. If Sarr's offense clicks that way with the shot, I think you get a Kevin Garnett type talent in the modern NBA. That I do not expect that. That is, don't quote me on Kevin Garnett, Alex Sarr. If you get that, that's certainly a franchise player. If you get slightly better Jaren Jackson Jr., I don't know, like, what are we calling a franchise player? Is it a max contract? Absolutely. Is it a defensive player of the year contender? Sure, in that case, like JJ won it this year. So certainly valuable, certainly a guy you build around. I don't know that I see versions of the offense getting there. I noticed in an interview he had at the Combine, he compared himself to Giannis Antetokounmpo. I marked him down a little bit in my valuation of him. I was like, bro, you got to know yourself. Like, this is not who you are. This is not your game. You can't just like Giannis, LeBron. Like, there are dudes you can't compare yourself to. That to me is one of them. I got to pick in for Houston. Am I going with it here? I got a Shams tweet. Houston is selecting at number 3, Reed Shepherd.
All right, Reed Shepherd. So we got 3 down here. Shepherd goes chalk. So this has been a chalk draft, which that's maybe the biggest surprise here, Fiddle, is that in a draft where there was so much uncertainty and no one knew anything, it's been very predictable so far. It looks like Houston could not find a taker for that number 3 pick.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I'm happy that I cashed a Shepherd 3rd pick. I'm happy I cashed my Shepherd top 10. Those are massive positions for me in terms of my risk. My reward was pretty small, but I'll be able to buy a nice dinner because of it. Shepard going number 3, though, it wonders how it fits with Houston. Like, does Fred VanVleet long for the Rockets? Are they going to stick with Jalen Green? Does it make him more of a trade candidate? The fit I always thought was a little awkward when they were so heavily linked to Reed Shepard, but now I'm happy it's finally in. And I think this means that 4 becomes chalk 2 with Castle. I don't think that the Spurs are going to be willing to let Charlotte potentially scoop them at 6. I think we see Castle here at 4, and then I sense that maybe we get some draft odds starting to pop back up, because then the Buzelis at 5 becomes something really interesting to watch, right? You know, when they say you're full of booze, you're not very good at basketball, but when you're boozeless, you get buckets. So is that the piece that pairs with Kate?
Well, that is terrible fiddle.
But by the way, on the fit in Houston to the Fred VanVleet. So Fred VanVleet is my comp for Reed Shepard. So here's what I would say about the fit. I don't like the idea of Reed Shepard fitting into that backcourt. I love the idea of Reed Shepard replacing what Fred VanVleet is a year from now when they're ready to move on and kind of turn the page to the next version of the team. I think that they're similar size. Freddie has made himself a positive defender despite his size. He's gone from undrafted and being off the radar because of his size to maximizing all the things he can do. If you were to take like any player in the NBA to be a mentor and teach Reed Shepard how to be an NBA player, Fred VanVleet is my pick. That's who you want to go and do this. I'd probably be happy with Chris Paul too. I think Freddie is a similar player. So I think this is a mentorship to me. I think this is a 1 year, maybe 2 year thing, and then you take over from there.
How tall is Shepard?
He is 6'3" with a 6'3" wingspan, which is even more problematic. But he had look, it's trouble. Like, I have my database of wingspans. I care more about wingspan than height. He has nearly the lowest wingspan in the database. Anyone that low, my notes literally say, you are a very negative defender. You are a Trae Young type defensive liability. You have to be an elite handle or an elite shooter, or you have no shot in the NBA. Well, guess what? Reed Shepard is the elitist of elite shooters by all the data that we have. He shot 52% on threes this year. He shot 50% almost on NBA threes, on like 90 of them this year. He shot 70% true shooting as a 6'3" SEC freshman. And to the defensive questions, I'm going to say it. I think he's going to be a positive defender. Not a defensive player of the year, not Drew Holiday. I think he's going to be one of those guys that other people are going to be like, oh, I got that dude. I'm taking the ball at him. I think he's going to hold his own. He has incredible hands. He has great timing. His steal rate was also off the charts, just as much as his shooting was. That's how good he was stealing. He had like 25 blocks this year as a 6'3" dude playing the SEC. Again, I'm going to keep repeating it because it doesn't fit with these numbers. He has been a positive team defender. He's going to get picked on sometimes. He's not going to lead the defense. I think he can be part of a good defense.
My bigger thing here, honestly, is, okay, if you've got Fred VanVleet and you've got Reed Shepard and you've got Amen Thompson and you've got Jalen Green,
one too many.
Somebody's got to go.
Yeah,
there's not room for all those guys. I don't think that they're moving on from Amen because he showed some really good things at the end of that season. He got hurt early, and then when he came back, was like really starting to show some things. Cam Whitmore, by the way, will throw into that conversation as well. It's just gonna be interesting to see what they do. I don't know if Houston pivots and maybe trades VanVleet in the last year of his deal. If that's a lot of money. If they try and target moving Jalen Green, because Jalen Green was part of their conversations with Brooklyn for Mikal Bridges, who eventually went to the Knicks. So it's just gonna be this is gonna set up a very interesting next 2 weeks in Houston, because otherwise, I don't know how this shakes out. Even if you are you bringing Shepard off the bench with Amen? I guess you just have Fred and Jalen, and then you have Amen and Shepard off the bench, I guess, as the combo. I'm very curious to see how this shapes up with Houston. Fiddle, I will say that kind of my lean right now is that there's probably gonna be changes with Houston. We know that they're trying to pressure the Suns for a KD trade. Don't think that's happening. Ishbia shut that down today. I don't know this trade moves me a lot on a Houston win total over, because the odds are that they probably move Jalen Green if they're going to move anybody, which makes it a little bit interesting to try and figure out what's the direction of this franchise going forward, and especially when we look at a win total market that'll be out in a few weeks.
Yeah, Windhorse came out today and said Houston really wants to get better, but not urgent to get better, right? And this kind of signals to me drafting Reed Shepherd and also doing that little draft asset swap where they push things down the road kind of was a little bit of an acceptance of we have a logjam and we're going to need some time to sort this out, right? So they traded the Nets picks back for Phoenix's picks so that they controlled future assets. They gained some extra picks in that process, but those potential Nets picks for next year were really high value in a great loaded draft. But Houston saying, hey, we have a logjam of too many young pieces right now. Let's push that assets down the road and let's take some time. So when we're looking forward to win totals, it's a situation where instead of playing their over and win total, instead of playing there to make the playoffs odds, if things go really well for Houston, I think we're back looking towards like the Ime Udoka coach of the year, because it's going to be another young and upcoming team where if I was wanting to back Houston, that's the direction that I would look instead of win totals.
We got a pick here. We got from Sham, San Antonio, number 4, selected Steph Castle. Chalk all the way so far.
Chalk all the way, yeah.
But
So,
no Clingan. So do we have a Clingan trade coming?
yeah, that's gonna be the question now. Is I think 5 is where this starts. Sam Vecenie of The Athletic has been like talking about that pretty consistently, that there's a strong chance that Detroit trades back with Memphis for Clingan. So we'll see if Clingan goes number 5. If Clingan goes 5, that will make for an interesting, because right now we still got number 6 picks up on the board in the market. Connect is plus 140, Salon plus 250, Clingan plus 550 if you were to get all the way to 6. Bazella 7-1. Castle obviously will be off the board here shortly. Any thoughts? Now the 8th pick is what just came up, so we're moving on down the board there. All right, Brandon, talk to me about Steph Castle and how he fits with Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, Steph Castle, I think, is you're just looking for like a projectable athletic wing. He's strong. He is very athletic. He played obviously a role on UConn championship team. So I like about him that a lot of times you have these superstar college players or G League Ignite or international, whatever they are, that you have to project to a role. And I think with Castle, he already played the role that we hoped that he would be in the NBA. So you got to see him do that. I think the key with him that we're not sure of, and this will be a big switch for him in San Antonio, you could not have gotten any better situation to step into than Steph Castle did at UConn. Great defenders all around, incredible coaching, the best in college, amazing spacing, great offensive system. He only took 2.2 threes a game this year, and he shot 27% on them. And when he took them, they were wide open, like 8 feet away, dudes, begging him, please, sir, will you take this shot? May I have this dance? And he's still not hitting them. And that wasn't an ideal situation. We've seen a lot of players. I'm very high on Ron Holland. Ron Holland with the Ignite was in like the worst situation possible and had also bad shooting numbers, but that there are reasons to believe there. With Castle, the concern is you already couldn't shoot when we were begging you to shoot with wide open shots. So that's going to matter. I think we're going to need to see the rest of San Antonio's team built out, which of course, 4 picks from now, we'll get another guy here. But to me, I comped him to early career Jimmy Butler. Now, that does not mean I think he's going to become late career Jimmy Butler. Early career Jimmy Butler defended hard, was versatile, was a strong guy, had to add the development later. I think he won most improvement at one point, if I remember right, and obviously like led teams to finals after that. So I think Castle is good. Everyone wants a wing. I had him top 5 for me. I think he needs still to get like that one hang my hat on this sort of skill. And, you know, we have time in San Antonio, but I don't think he is the star lead engine guy for that team. They might already have him. That might just be Wembanyama, so maybe they'll need to worry about that. They do need him to shoot, though.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of the questions. I know the Spurs tried to move up to get actually Ricochet and Castle, which would have been a really interesting kind of combo to put 2 top 5 guys in the same draft, but they'll have a chance to get 2 top 10 with their pick later on if they don't trade up. 5 is going to be really fascinating here. Miles Bazelis was the chalk favorite for a very long time. This has gone chalk all night. So we'll see if Bazelis is the pick there. I have kind of heard that there's been a little bit of move. Maybe they've at least opened up their possibilities for what Detroit wants to do. It's very interesting to see where the Pistons are at in this process, just because there's no indication that they're kind of pivoting to win now. Like that's not like what they're trying to do. They're not trying to be like, we were awful last year, let's try and be respectable. Seems like they're very much like, no, like we're that far away, we should probably try and get Cooper Flag next year. And so they're gonna go ahead and pursue that again here. Fiddle, I do want to kind of ask you what else you're tracking tonight. Is there any sort of bets that you're still keeping an eye on as we get later into the draft?
So I would love these markets to open back up again, but 9 at Memphis was something that I was really interested with. I was thinking that it was going to be Devin Carter, actually, because he's been linked to them and his dad is an assistant coach on the team. There's been a lot of family ties around the NBA recently. This draft is loaded with it, with the Bronny and LeBron talk. We had the playoffs with Brunson and Rick Brunson talk, and now I'm like, don't sleep on Memphis with the Carters. So I think that's a really nice fit if they do stay at 9 and he's there. I think he's the choice. We know they've been trying to move up. We know they've been trying to potentially move back. So that was one that I was monitoring in terms of live stuff. And then it becomes, where does Clingan go? Where does Edey go? Because Edey was linked to Portland at 14, right? So now Portland trades 14 for Denny Avia. Do you think that they take Edey at 7? Probably not, especially if Clingan's still there. Do they forego that? Does Edey now go to Thunder at 12, Chicago at 11? So I think there's definitely some things that we're monitoring still for sure.
Okay, we're gonna do one more pick here. We'll get through the 5th pick and we'll react to that. And then we're gonna take a break, and then we're gonna come back with you with another episode of Buckets Live after the draft. Brandon Anderson and I are gonna break down whatever else happens throughout this draft, whatever trades go down. We'll talk about all that, plus everything that the Knicks did in the last 48 hours, 24 hours really, to shape up their team as a contender in the Eastern Conference. We'll keep an eye on all that. Make sure you hit that like button as well. We're not getting out of here yet, though. We're still gonna go ahead and wait on this number 5 pick. Will be really interesting to get into what happens here at 5. Brandon, one word answer. Who would you take at 5 here with the board where it is for Detroit?
I take Ron Holland. That's a sentence, not a word, but he's top of my board, so I'd take Ron Holland.
Okay. Julian asked, how does Castle pick affect the Spurs at number 8? Honestly, I think the Spurs are probably going to look. I would not be surprised if the Spurs move that pick, but if they keep it, I think Topic is actually, I think, an option for them at 8. I think that you're going to see teams interested in reaching for Ron Holland. I think if Cody Williams slips, I think Connect. I think probably not Clingan if he slides that far. Would not be an option for them, so he might slide further than that. I know Memphis likes Holland at 9, so that's one that I'm really interested to see whether or not he goes in that spot right there.
One thing with the Spurs that I'll keep an eye on also, if they do take someone like Topic, and I thought this already with Castle, I am notoriously hard on teams that are playing ball handlers, young rookie ball handlers, as like lead engines of their offense. If we get a Spurs team playing 2 top 10 young ball handlers leading an offense, there's going to be a lot of Spurs hype this year. There's going to be a lot of Wemby MVP hype. I will be strongly considering it. He is the real deal. I thought he was a top 5 player since January 1. I will very much temper my expectations for the Spurs if we've got 2 possible lead guards that are rookies. I think that is a story that I'll be paying attention to from a big NBA picture, where I'm ready now to tiptoe into the Spurs playoff waters, and maybe, I'm not sure Wemby wins MVP, but I could see him like making the ballot sort of thing. And this would temper my expectations a little bit if that were the case, if they do take 2 guys like that.
Can Castle throw lobs?
I think so. I don't see why not. I don't have a lot of recollection of it. UConn is such an egalitarian team that they shared everything. Oh, we've got to pick in. We've got to pick our first surprise. Detroit at number 5 has listened to my advice. Ron Holland headed to the Detroit Pistons.
Wow.
Ron Holland, a guy that I think personally, if everything clicks, I think that he has the most upside in the draft. I think that he's a guy that has the full package of tools. Now, he is not the best player right now in the NBA. The fun of projecting the draft and doing the scouting is you have to project the best player 5 years and 10 years from now, not just who is the best player right now. Ron Holland is not ready right now. Get your Detroit unders back out. We're ready to ride again. It's not going to go well yet. I like him. I had him number 1 on my board initially. I eventually got there with Reed Shepherd. I have a number 2 now. I think it's a great pick for Detroit, but it's going to take some time, as everything in Detroit is right now.
I got killed on top 3, but I had Castle under and Castle at number 4, and I had Shepherd top 5 minus 170. That was an absurd line. You had the top 10. What was the number on your Shepherd top 10 that you gave out?
Minus 5,000, because I knew it was a reflection of your minus 170. And then when the minus 170 moved to minus 550, I said, well, then let me just pick off the minus 5,000. That becomes stale. Does Holland going at 5 increase the chances that Carter goes 9 to Memphis now, because it takes off another option that they really liked?
I wonder, here's the problem. They're what, 3 picks from Connect, or not from Connect, from Clingan. From Clingan.
Just sitting there.
That's who they've been wanting.
They're going to really look to trade up right now, right?
They might just wait and see if anybody's going to take Clingan. If Clingan slides past 6, 7, 8, like, are you taking Donavan Clingan next to Victor Wembanyama?
He can't slide past 7 if Portland was so heavily linked to Edey. I can't imagine that to be the case.
Edey, well, I'll say this. Portland likes both Connect and Cody Williams a lot. They really like Cody Williams. Now, they had interest in Clingan, so they might take that. But very interesting here, selection.
I don't know, man. Charlotte's sitting there. Charlotte screams Donovan Clingan to me as like just the classic Hornets. Oh, winning player, winning team. I watched them this year. Tall, giant, white guy that's really good at center.
Brandon,
I know.
New Hornets, though. New
Hornets. Yeah, Brandon, Jordan's gone.
New Hornets.
I know.
They're
Listen, you did it with the Wizards earlier. I'm doing it with the Hornets now. Okay, old habits die hard. I'm just saying it feels right to me.
Everything I've see, this is what's interesting about Charlotte is Charlotte wanted Shepherd and Castle, and they're both gone. Those are the top 2 guys on their board. So I'm really interested to see what happens here with.
So this is the spot then. If Memphis did want to move up,
yeah.
Woj is saying another team working to move up and secure Clingan is Portland. He just tweeted that right now.
That's interesting, man. They're gonna. Jake Fisher, Charlotte's trading back from number 6 to number 9 with Memphis. So Clingan's going 6.
Wow, this would be an amazing live bet scenario if these books weren't so scared of us.
All right. We'll have you covered on
If
Action
then
Network.
Comes true.
We'll have you covered on Action Network with reaction to the draft. Brandon and I will both have columns up tonight. After the draft, after the first round, make sure to tune in on youtube.com/the Action Network. We'll put it on Twitter as well. You can join us. Brandon and I will recap the entire first round. We'll talk about the implications. We'll talk Rookie of the Year. We'll get Brandon's very first thoughts on Rookie of the Year. He's going to have this market all sharped out. My thanks to Fiddle for joining us for the market reaction. My thanks to Tito for jumping on, helping us produce tonight's Buckets live. Make sure to subscribe and hit the like button there on youtube.com/the Action Network. We'll talk to you guys again later on tonight with more reaction to the NBA draft.